Yo, yo, yo.
What's up, dude?
What's up? What's up? Welcome to another live stream here on Tales from the Shelf. Joined as ever by my hetero life mate, Tyler. Tyler,
Thanks for
what's.
having me again.
Yeah, of course, man. What's going on?
Cool, dude. Chilling. I know
I
you
was.
just kind of rushed home from work.
God, dude, it sucked today. The whole time I'm like, I'm gonna be late. I'm gonna have to rush home, eat something. Sucks. But how was your day, man?
It was good.
Yeah.
Pretty. Yeah, nothing to report. I kind of cheated and like brushed up on some scenes from Dune 2 today.
Oh, on HBO?
Nah, just like watching random shit on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Nice, nice.
yeah, 'cause I saw it back like a little while ago.
Allie's here. Thank you so much for being here, Allie. Thank you
Yeah.
for always supporting. I'm glad you got the. Hopefully that means you got the reference to Jay and Silent Bob. That is Tyler and I's one of our favorite movies.
Dude, we got to do something with that at some point.
Maybe like dude, people do like watch alongs. Like if you have the audio down enough to where like YouTube doesn't copyright strike you or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
we could do like a watch along and then like do like a live reaction to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. That'd be pretty fucking.
That'd
That'd
be
be
great.
pretty great.
I feel like I could probably just recite the whole
It,
movie
well, yeah, I think it'd
from
actually just
memory.
be annoying for people to listen to because we would just be quoting the entire movie the whole time. Um,
This is just water, by the way. Too.
Sorry, because I got some iced tea. Got
Nice.
some Pure Leaf. Um, so tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the movies that we've seen this year. We're about halfway through the year now, and felt like as good a time as any to do a little bit of like a roundup, just kind of talk about what we've seen so far.
That's crazy. We're like halfway through the year. That doesn't sound accurate.
I'm ready for it to go by even quicker. I'm ready to skip summer. I would skip summer if I could. I fucking hate summer. Um, so Allie says she's seeing In a Violent Nature on Sunday,
Oh shit.
which I'm very excited for you. Hopefully you like it half as much as I do. Because if that's the case, then you're in for a good time. Movie was awesome.
Sounded very interesting.
Yeah, we might talk a little bit about that after we've talked about some other movies. But since you said you started off with Dune a little bit earlier, let's just talk. Let's go right into Dune 2.
Dude, have so when did that come out now? Because
I
it
came
actually seems
I
like it
came
was a
out in
while ago.
March. It was
I'm looking
supposed
up
to
the.
come out last year, but it got delayed with the strikes.
Okay, I guess that's why my timeline is weird.
Yeah, so it got delayed with the strikes, and yeah, it came out back in March like 16th or something like that.
Okay.
How many times have you seen it? Was it just the once?
Oh, I saw it through the one. I watched it through once, and it was actually I have like a movie theater that I can walk to now, which I've been excited to go to.
Mm,
And that was like the first one that we walked to go see there, and it was downpouring, which was very ironic and kind of set the mood pretty well. So
that's
yeah, it was
cool.
cool.
Dude, going to the movies when it's raining out is one of my favorite things to do.
And just like because like there's no rain like in Dune like
Mm.
that, and like that whole thing was. I was like, wow, like it sucked. I was just getting drenched, but I was like, this is pretty ironic right now.
Sometimes you can hear like the rain like pounding on the roof of the theater too, if it's raining really hard.
Mm-hmm. Sick.
Um, yeah, dude. So I mean, I've been excited for this since 2021 when that first one came out,
That's crazy.
because
That was that long ago.
you know that that another one's coming. So yeah, the hype levels were pretty high. Um, and so coming out of it, I was pretty blown away. I haven't read the book. I think I've got it somewhere. I've got it like around here somewhere, but I haven't read it yet, so I don't really know what happens. Or now I do since I've seen the film, but I didn't really know like where it was going. You know.
You're like, I have no idea. You're like, I watched it and just
Now, have
I
you
have no
had?
idea.
Did you read Dune or Ellie read Dune or something like that?
Ellie's read the entire series.
Oh wow.
I read the first book essentially up to where the movies like split, which was perfect. I had like read it and then just kind of stopped reading it,
Mm.
and then the first movie came out, and then I had like realized like, oh, like I didn't read past where the movie ended, and so I was like, screw it, like I'm just gonna stop reading it,
Mm.
stop trying to read it, and I'll just like just see the rest of it fresh as a movie, which was cool.
It's very dense. It was written in like 1965 or something like that. So it's crazy. Trying to get into something like that has always been difficult for me. It's like I don't read nearly as much as I used to anyway, so especially
Mm-hmm.
something like that, I feel like there's a bit of a barrier for entry.
It's so like he's an incredible writer, but
Mm,
it's like so poetic, and it's like very flowery, like very dense language,
yeah.
which again like Ellie loves, but like I don't love, like I love the story and like the characters and the world he creates, and just but actually just like sitting down and like reading through that like page by page is just like just too much for me. But
Yeah, it can be a lot and you've really got to be in the right mood for it. What is your familiarity with Denis Villeneuve's filmography? How many of his other films have you seen?
um, a few I've seen Arrival, which is fucking
Mm,
great. Um, I actually have not seen Blade Runner.
dude.
I know.
Yeah.
Um,
That was
and
the
then
one where oh, go ahead.
I feel like there is something else from him that I have seen though. I think I've seen both Dunes, Arrival, and I feel like there was something
He
else.
did a film called Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal and
Prisoners
Hugh Jackman. Have you seen that?
and Paul Dano.
Yeah. Yeah, that movie's crazy.
Dude, that's a dark
Um,
film.
very
That's a real
dark.
dark
I've
film.
only seen
Yeah.
it the one time. I need to watch it again. Yeah,
That's kind of one of those for me. I was like, I saw it once. Good.
I know I want to see it again because it's just that good, but you really got to be in the right mood for it. Dude, so Blade Runner 2049, one of the best movies just in general I've ever seen. And that was one where when you hear that Denise doing Dune, you're like, oh, that's fucking sick.
Mm-hmm.
Because stylistically, well, I guess stylistically they're quite different. One's very like neon drenched, and the other's like just these desert vistas. But the
Like scale.
yeah, the fact that it's sci-fi, um, lends to like okay, Denis could do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was super fucking stoked. And yeah, I mean, the first part, Dune Part One, was really great. Um, just on its own, like in a vacuum, with only having like half of a story,
Mm-hmm.
still incredible. And then Part Two is like just sort of amps it up, and it's all the payoff for all the buildup that you got in Part One. And I just wanted to know like what your thoughts were like coming out of Dune Two.
Dude, so I love my favorite kinds of movies are things that are like very um that border more on like realism, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
that I don't love like huge blockbuster fun films, like obviously enjoy that, but that's not like my favorite thing.
Right.
And I remember coming out of Dune, and this might be a little bit of a pattern here with some of the movies we're talking about, but like I remember coming out of Dune and just being like I feel like it hit both of those so well, and where I just like I loved it. Like there's obviously a lot of the story of Dune subverts a lot of the typical like hero journey and like blockbustery superhero esque like
Yeah.
kind of movies, but there's obviously a lot of like similarities as well with that type of movie. But the actual feel of that film is like completely different. Like it would feel weird putting it next to like a Marvel film or a superhero thing or just like a big action film. Like it just feels very distinct in like its in the texture and like how they go about everything. And yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's God, I mean I hate to even compare it to anything else because in my opinion Denis is like just sort of in a league of his own as far as like directors working today.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe a dozen, maybe more directors where if I hear that they have a new film coming out,
I'm
um,
in, I'm in,
like
I'm in there.
active directors, I'm my tickets bought
Mm-hmm.
essentially, and Denis
Mm-hmm.
that is that for me. So yeah, just the scale and the scope of this thing was just insane, and having not known the story going into it and how it goes, um, just had me that much more excited to see where it went. And once I finally did see it, I was able to talk with people who were more familiar with the source material and kind of feel like we were all on like an even playing field. And now it's like we're all part of the conversation. But so, in your opinion, who was like the standout role here in Dune 2? Like, because the cast is so vast, and I would be very shocked if at least one, if not multiple, people receive nominations at the Oscars next year. So I was just wondering, like, who would be your pick to like steal an award next year at the Oscars?
Dude, everybody's so good.
Everyone is so good. Yeah, it's hard, right?
Everybody's so good. I think it's. I don't know if this is a cop out answer, but I'm actually go with Paul. Like I feel like that
Oh, Timothy
character.
Chalamet.
Yeah, like that character is like actually like, especially in the second movie, is like so complex. Like the whole movie constantly is questioning like, is this the guy? Is this not the guy?
Mm-hmm.
Is he just trying to like live, or is he trying to do some crazy shit? And you never really know. And I feel like it would have been easy for that to kind of like not fully land. And I feel like for the first chunk of the film, you're like, yeah, I don't know about this guy. And then at some point, he just like locks in. But even then, you're like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
he's kind of on the fence. Like he's a fence sitter for most of it, and
Eh,
his motivation is clearly defined. Like he wants revenge
mm-hmm.
for like his family's massacre and stuff, and then it's sort of just naturally um, kind of follows that it would in order to get his revenge, he kind of takes on that role that everyone is so keen to bestow upon him. So it's sort of like this self fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, like even at the end, like they never fully are like, okay, like it's all good. He's the guy now. Because even at the very end in like the fight scene, like almost like there was a chunk of time in that fight scene where I was like, are they gonna fucking kill Timothy Chalamet? Right? Like, can they do that? Like, I don't like what happens after this. I don't know. Can they do that?
Dude, yeah,
And
it's. I mean, I don't know that I had those thoughts, but
he kind of like scrapes him just a little bit with the knife, and you kind of
dude,
hear just like,
yeah, man.
ugh,
I I'll just shout out three that I thought were great. Austin Butler as um what's his fucking name? Fade
that
Routha.
that pale
Austin
kid.
Butler's
Yeah,
Fade Routha was on another level. He
he was
really
him.
he put his whole fucking Batusi into it, for lack of a better word. Dan here wants to talk about the worms. We'll get to that. We'll get to the worms. I wonder if Pete's watching too. Dan and Pete probably hanging out. What's up, fellas?
Hi, Pete's.
Dude, Austin Butler was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Javier Bardem was great, and
Bro,
he walks
so funny.
he's so funny, and it's like he's not trying to, but it provides some much needed levity. When like I laughed out loud in the theater when it like cuts to him like wide eyed talking to the other like fucking acolytes or whatever, and he's like, of course he would say that he is not. It's like that's exactly what he would do. The Lisa Nalgai would do that, and it's so funny, and it's not, and it's in character for him, so it
Yeah,
doesn't ever break any kind of like, oh, you're just trying to be funny. Like
yeah,
it's
no,
just
no,
what he
no,
would
no.
do, and it's just funny. So he was great. Austin Butler was great. And then Rebecca Ferguson was fucking phenomenal too as the Reverend Mother. When she
Dude,
makes that switch, when she drinks that God, what's that flavor of Gatorade? Like the blue Gatorade.
that
Uh,
glacier freeze.
dude, she was drinking that glacier freeze that the worm secreted, dude, and she activated. And she was great, man. She was really good. And then
Yep.
but Timothy Chalamet too. The spoilers for Dune 2, guys. Whoever's watching, I'm sure everyone here has seen it. But there's the scene where he's addressing all of the like
Oh yeah,
all of the what is the
everybody.
word? What is the word I'm looking for? All of the people who
The
believe.
Fremen.
Yeah, all the Fremen.
You talking about the scene where he's like, "Look, I'm that fucking boy," and like, if
He's
you don't
like
think I'm that boy, what's
he's
up?
like
Like that
I
scene.
he's like there's no one in here who could challenge me, and everyone like steps up. I mean, he really was commanding that scene. You know, he commands the screen in that scene, and it was so awesome. And then the scene when he tames the worm, so sick. I mean, I saw it first at Regal, which doesn't have IMAX or anything, but then again I saw it with Dan and them,
Oh
and
yeah.
at the IMAX, and that was incredible. Three worms in IMAX was something special. Um, yeah, I mean, I rarely see new release movies in theaters twice. Usually, I'm good. I'll wait till I get the Blu-ray or whatever. But I was more than happy to see Dune 2 again. So,
Can we talk about the worm real quick? Actually,
yeah, please.
so there's the scene where Paul rides the worm for the first time, right?
Yeah,
Which is super metal, and they actually used like so there's obviously like a bunch of CGI in Doom, but a lot of it also is like enhancing physical practical stuff that they actually create first.
yeah. Everything
And
really does have this lived-in feel, doesn't it?
dude, yeah, and like part of that is like the practical effects. Like the worm was literally like they had this huge like they made the top of that worm was like real, and then they
Mm,
just like put a stunt guy on it and just blasted him with sand, and then like strapped down cameras,
yeah,
and and a bunch of that scene is like shot as if it was like GoPro cameras like on the worm, and they just like stick you in there for that scene, which is
that's so
awesome.
cool. Were you
It was
watching some behind the scenes stuff or something?
watch behind the scenes of how they shot some stuff, and then a bunch of stuff on the sound design. And Denis was very specific about like, he's like, I want all of this. He said that he wanted it to sound and look more like it was a documentary than a film. So
Mm,
almost everything that they used sound design wise was like recordings and very tactile. They used very little like digital stuff, and I feel like that gives it a lot of its like weight and it that like the feeliness of it, where you're
yeah,
like it feels so real, even though it's obviously not. But
yeah.
like
But
sort of
there's
his
you
creation.
never have that disconnect at any point when you're watching it, even when there's three, count them, three worms on the screen. Um, at no point am I like taken out of it, which can too often happen with movies of this scale and size.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you just know Denis the kind of guy who's going to prioritize something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really admire him for that.
He's definitely a legend.
Um, so I know you said Ellie's read all of them. Where do you know anything about where the story goes beyond this?
I know like the over. I definitely did at one point, right? She read these like 3 years ago now, whatever, and kind of like gave me the rundown of them as she'd finish a book. So at some point, I knew most of the big story beats, but like the story gets so absolutely insane
I've heard
that
some things, like little
it,
things here and there, like, oh, this happens,
and you're
and
like,
and you're like, what? and
nah.
and earlier you were talking about how they sort of subvert expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and so like if someone were to only watch these two movies and never investigated past that, they would think that this is a much more conventional sort of story than it is. But I know some things that happen later on, and it's very much like Paul, maybe not the best guy, you know.
He goes to a lot of shit, man.
He goes through a lot of stuff, and it's just I think if anything, it's just a more three-dimensional idea of like a guy like that, and not just sort of like this propped up version of that character, which it's and that's very much intended in the source material. So my only hope is that Denis pretty much said he's going to do Messiah, and that'll
Mm-hmm.
sort of be like his trilogy. And then
Mm-hmm.
anything that happens past that, any further books that they decide to adapt, I don't think he'd be involved in. I think he said,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean these things take him. I think he spent like 6 years of his life making these two films, and
Jesus.
then it'll probably be another 2, 3 on a third one. So that's a long time, and he wants to make other stuff. So it's very likely we only get one more from him, which I would be fine with. Honestly, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to see this become like Star Wars or anything like that, where it's just become so watered down to where I just could
Or
not give a shit.
yeah, or worse, like maybe not worse, but like I would hate for this to be like a James Cameron kind of thing, where like
Mm,
Denis just for the next 40 years makes Dune, and then is like,
yeah.
damn, that's it.
It's funny you
Like,
say that because Denis actually did an interview with James Cameron where they sat down and talked with each
mm-hmm.
other because it was a really great conversation because the two of them operate so differently. But they both basically said like, I watched your movie and I was blown away by how you did that. Like, and they both shared the same
They're like,
sentiment,
you're so good at making movies. It's like, yeah.
which is always great to see. Even though they're so dressed, like Avatar is like all like fake, like none
Like,
of it's
literally, yeah.
there's not really anything like, at least for me, but like not there's nothing like tactile. Like it
Mm-hmm.
all feels very and that's not to say Avatar is not good or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just very different from Denis' style, which we were talking about earlier. How it's all so everything feels very tangible
Grounded.
and
Yeah.
lived in and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool conversation. I'd recommend people go check that out if you're interested. It was like it's like actor. They do like the actors on actors. Sometimes they
Oh
do
yeah,
like
yeah.
the directors on directors, and they'll just like talk for an hour. It's really good shit.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
those.
did you have anything else on Dune before we move on to the next movie?
I mean, we could sit here and talk about Dune for like 6 hours, but
I feel like we
yeah.
could. Um, it's hard though with a movie like this where it's like I don't have anything bad to say about it, and it really everything boils down to it fucking rules. And yeah, that's about really all I got.
How about I do have one slight criticism that's relevant for other conversations that
Ooh,
we'll have, so I
okay,
think it's worth throwing out there.
okay.
And this is also some of my uh, perception of a movie is also like joint with Ellie's, like my girlfriend, so I watch essentially any movie with. So like
Hmm.
we have that conversation, and afterwards about how the movie was, and um, we both there's like not the most intense chemistry between like Paul and Chani,
Mm, yeah,
and
I would agree with that.
but like again like that's some of that is the script, right? It's like the movie where it's like there is a lot of tension between them, but I don't think I had like previously in the month around the same time we were watching like some old um, like 80s movies. God, what was that one that I was telling you about? It's really good. It's what's his name?
I need more than that to go on.
The Breakfast Club. Um, the writer and director of
Oh,
Breakfast
John
Club and
Hughes.
John Hughes. So you're watching John Hughes movie, and he like really nails that, right? Where you're like okay, like there's this guy and there's this girl, and they're like obviously like I don't know what's gonna happen, but they're obviously like into each other, and like that's
Hmm.
like big premise of like any of his movies. So they watched that kind of stuff, and I just felt like there was never quite that in Dune where you're like, man, like I really hope Paul doesn't go too crazy, and I hope this doesn't happen because like I want to see him and China together, and I feel like if there was any trade off they were gonna make in that film, like I'm fine with them being like, okay, we don't need to put too much time into this like
Yeah, it,
relationship, but
it's certainly not the most sweeping like romance of all time.
mm-hmm.
It's not. It's pretty underbaked. I would say that aspect of it. I would say it's like just good enough to where like it services the story and everything, but yeah, I don't know. There's just so much other shit going on that it's almost like an
That's
afterthought.
mm-hmm.
So that is definitely valid criticism, but yeah, it's just I don't know. Not, something like that didn't quite bother me, but it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
like if someone were to tell me that that was a flaw, then I would hesitate to say that they're wrong for sure.
This is will they won't they? This is no they won't.
I
No,
don't
I don't
want them
want them to.
to. Oh man.
All right,
Um.
that's all I got.
Yeah. No. All right. So that's it for Dune. Dune's great. Everyone knows Dune. Everyone loves Dune.
Three worms.
Let's talk about challengers.
Also three, not worms.
This is the ultimate three worm movie, minus with the exception of Dune 2. Um, where to start with this one? This one's a little more tricky to discuss than Dune. There's a
Challengers
little
was
bit more going on. Challengers
kicked
was
ass though.
great. Um, First, I'll ask you, what is your familiarity with this director, Luca Guadagnino?
Shortly before I went and saw this, I watched Past Lives for the first time. It isn't him, but it's his wife. Um,
Um,
that wrote that.
no, I think that is the guy who wrote one of Luca's movies. Is
I don't know.
Nah, it's not Luca's wife. Well, Luca's like an old man, kind of. He's like older.
You don't know,
Um,
bro?
I'm fairly certain that you're thinking of somebody else.
Wait, so maybe I'm thinking of the writer
Yeah, yeah,
of
the writer,
Challengers.
one of the writers of yeah, the writer of Challengers is married to Greta Lee, who wrote
Okay.
Past Lives.
Okay. So, but you're asking me about the director of Challengers.
Yes.
Then I think that's your answer right there. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah,
good, right?
I saw this with my girlfriend, and it was
That's
we were both incredibly into it. Just the whole time we were let's start with the music in this movie. The music in this movie was like noticeably good.
it was
Like
electric.
a lot of times in movies, music is like wallpaper. It's just kind of there. You don't, it services. It kind of tells you how you're supposed to be feeling at this moment and this moment, and it doesn't ever really like stand out where you take notice, you take stock
Mm-hmm.
of what you're listening to, and it's
Or
actually like one of the songs is like on my on repeat playlist on
oh yeah,
Spotify. Yeah, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross,
yeah,
insanely good.
yeah. They snapped, dude. I'm like a I'm like a music and movie. I don't want to say I'm like a movie music hater, but I much prefer I would much prefer a movie that just has no music at all than a movie that has like a bunch of it. I feel like a lot of times it becomes a crutch for you like, oh, like we
Oh
didn't
yeah,
really you're like we didn't nail the feeling of this, so we're gonna like add some score or add worse like add a fucking just a song, like this is a pop
it's
song.
so lazy. Like a prime example of that is the Suicide Squad from 2016, where it's just
You're just
like
it's playing the whole
licensed
time.
music after licensed music, just like needle drop after needle drop. Um, it'll be like a war scene, and they'll play like "Fortunate Son," like just the most lazy choices of all like that you could
That's
possibly
like the
imagine.
most. That's like the laziest, actually.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously a garbage movie, but um, yeah, I would
Yeah,
much prefer like something like this over like just needle drops that feel like extremely on the nose.
yeah, but it's like Challengers does it in such an interesting way where like so much of it is like it's almost comedic, where like there'll be kind of a break in like action or something, and then something starts up again, and then they just like wow, like drop right into just like
I wish
this
I could
like
play some of the music right now,
uh,
just because it's so good. It's like it reminded me of like the shit you would hear when Blade like enters that vampire nightclub, and it's like just like this like kind of rave esque music, like just very like
mm-hmm,
super high BPM, just really just
just
makes
like
you
very
kind of want to
like
like get up and go. And
mm-hmm,
all right, so let's get into like the actual like movie itself.
mm-hmm,
Well, first, I have been a pretty big fan of Luca Guadagnino. He did the Suspiria remake in
mm,
2018, which I'm pretty partial to. He
mm-hmm.
did Bones and All from 2 years ago, last
I haven't
year.
seen that. Yeah.
Really good movie. Um, I thought so anyway. Rain actually does not like that one, but uh, so I was like, okay, I'll see his next thing. It looks cool. Oh, it's about tennis. I don't really know about nothing about tennis, but I'll check it out. Um, Admittedly, I'm not like the biggest like Zendaya fan. I think she's like fine.
Mm-hmm.
She's certainly not someone who's going to get me excited about a movie. And I
You're
thought
not
she
gonna go
was,
for her.
yeah, no, not at all. I thought this one, I thought she was fine here, but the real standouts were the two leads, who are Mike Faced and Josh O'Connor, I think are
Sure.
their names. Couldn't tell you anything else I've seen them in, but I was immediately just kind of taken by their chemistry, and that's such a big part of the movie, and it really feels
Yeah.
like these guys are like best friends and maybe like also a little bit more than that. Which was like such an
Yeah.
interesting dynamic that I don't think I've seen in like any like what was your takeaway from like on that?
I like now thinking back, like and thinking of like the movie poster, right? Like the main like image that you'd see, like that we use for the thumbnail of this, like the three of
Oh
them
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the bed, like like they don't. I don't think they were like sneaky about like hiding what the movie was about, right?
No, I don't
But
think
I
so
didn't
either.
think it was gonna be as direct and as big of a part of the movie that it is, and but it was just like so interesting, and there's like so many layers to like the relationship of all three of them,
Yeah, it's
and
fucking nuts, dude.
and yeah, and just like the way that they go about telling the story, where it's like there's almost nobody else in that movie. Like it's just the three of them, and then occasionally somebody else for like a couple minutes in a scene.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're just jumping around in the timeline, just the three of them interacting in different ways, and then coming back to that first, occasionally coming back to the actual like real time tennis match, and it like
Yeah, at
recontextualizes
the
it.
New Rochelle. Yes. That's a great point. So
Dude, it was crazy.
loved how this thing felt like epic and in is like this decades long story. Didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that that was an aspect. Like I didn't know that that's what the movie was going to be based on the trailer. You don't really get that.
Mm.
And like you said, every time we come back to that initial that match that's like happening in the present day, it like you said, it you get more information about their dynamic, and it just recontextualizes everything that's been going on. And what I love about it, as at its core, it's just like it's this rivalry. Take Zendaya out of the equation. These guys, they're the two leads, you know, and Zendaya's kind of just like this Yoko Ono situation where she's like pulling them apart or whatever. But like they are such good friends, but they are rivals as well in the sport that they are both super passionate about. And then she comes along and then makes their paths kind of diverge a little bit. And I love a good story where it's just like I don't think you've seen it, but The Color of Money with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. It's that pool movie that I really like.
Isn't that Scorsese?
Yeah, Scorsese directed that,
Sounds dope.
and it's just like it's a rivalry with two characters, and they butt heads through this sport, and it just follows them across many years. And what's great about it is I mean, God, I'm kind of rambling here. The ending of the movie is it had me like ready to like run through a brick wall. What
Mm-hmm.
what was your take on just like the resolution of everything, and like were you satisfied with the way that it all ended? Because some people were like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't like that ending. It's so
Dude,
abrupt." To me, it was perfect.
the ending's amazing. It's perfect. Like they all effectively got what they want
Yeah,
in the end. Like you kind of real like I feel like so it's hard to pin down exactly like what everybody wants out of this like
there's so many
complicated
moving
relationship.
parts. There's a lot of moving parts.
And at least like for me, like I'm like we were talking about this like on the walk home. I was like, what were they trying to get? And I was like, okay, like Zendaya, like legitimately, genuinely fucking loves tennis,
Yeah, she just
and
wants
just
to
like
see some good tennis,
she wants to see great tennis,
and she
and
sees these two guys as like a vehicle to like
she's like these guys have the best match, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's like, if I can somehow get these guys to just play their fucking best game of tennis, then she'll do whatever she has to do to get that to happen.
And she
That's an
kind of like,
oversimplification, but
yeah, but and she's also part of that is driven by like her living vicariously through them because she gets
mm,
injured. She can't
yeah,
play herself, so she's the next best thing I can do is like feel really close to somebody who has this experience, and then that's kind of like me having that experience. So
yeah,
she's trying to see great tennis. Her husband, what is like it seems more like he's like like wants to win kind of person. Like he just wants to like achieve and like
yeah.
win.
He wants to be the famous tennis player, and he like kind of wants everything that comes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't remember their character names, but Mike Faced is the one who winds up marrying
The blonde one. Yeah, yeah.
Zendaya, and
Mm-hmm.
Joshua O'Connor is like the one who's like living out of his car. So I really loved that juxtaposition as well, where it's like these guys are kind of on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, and then for them to come to a head at this like podunk, like super, it's you're made to understand that this is a very like
Low
some
stakes.
super low stakes. Like this is the last place you would expect to see such an intense game, like the one that winds up playing out over the course of the movie. God, it was. I want to watch this again. I've
Mm-hmm.
got the Blu-ray pre-ordered. It's coming next month on
Let's
Amazon.
go.
So, yeah, I was just. I think also what it was I came into this with really not much expectations at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yep.
just like, this will be, a good movie, and
Mm-hmm.
it's currently my favorite movie of the year. I actually have it over Dune 2, believe it or not, just because I think I had more fun watching Challengers than I did with Dune 2.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one because like you're saying about like the music, like there's a few things that it does that I don't generally enjoy in a film, like lots of like very direct music being one of them. Um and but like the way that it did it, I was just like I liked it that much more because I was like I usually don't like this and
It's
it's
so
doing it so
bold.
well that yeah,
It's so
yeah.
confident in its decisions where it's like this is the music that's playing in this scene, and it's like they know the reaction that they're going to elicit from the audience member. And it's like and you love it for that because it's like, oh, this is cool. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
go. And it gets you fucking invested in tennis, which I don't give a shit about tennis. I don't know anything about tennis.
Tennis is
But
intense.
this movie really had me just fucking thrilled, to be honest. Just I was so on the edge of my seat waiting to see what was going to happen.
Dude, I was like back home for a little bit last summer as I
Hmm.
was like kind of transitioning places and got really sick at one point. And there was a couple days there was some big tennis tournament on, and my dad has like the tennis channel or whatever for that's like a thing, and he has that for whatever reason. And so they were just broadcasting the whole tournament the whole time, and so I was just like slumped, just like half sick, half asleep, just watching tennis the whole time, and got like really into it, and then haven't watched it since then. So this was it's a treat for me. It was great.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just kind of like tuning bit in and out.
Yeah, it's just kind of just slumped.
So that's Challengers. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about this movie?
No, I definitely one that you have to like watch again. I feel like there'd be a lot of payoff as you kind of go, and you can be like, oh, like this happens now, so like later when this happens, like they're connected to this, and I think there's like a lot of that, which
Dude,
like I love,
yeah.
and yeah.
Something that I missed initially was how at one point earlier in the film, one of them, one of the two guys puts like the tennis ball like in the cradle of the racket, and that's like a signal to the other that he like slept with some girl. Like that's their established code.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally missed that because in the finale, when he does it to him to
I was
signify that
I was waiting for it.
Zendaya cheated on him, and you have that realization where it's like these guys know each other so well that they're able to communicate without any words whatsoever, and we pick up on that as the audience. Like that was like incredible. And then from that point on, then you realize, okay, we're gonna do this our way, and we're just gonna say who wins, who wins. Like we're not, no one's throwing anything. Like this is our game. From like so that's them taking control away from Zendaya in that moment, which was so fucking satisfying to watch.
Yeah, I was like waiting for it because like there's like that long kind of so they established that like probably halfway through the film. They have
Yeah.
like that scene where he's like all right, like you don't have to say anything, but just like do this if you did sleep with her and do this if you didn't. And then so in the end they have this long, they kind of like break for a second in that match and kind of just stand there and you don't know
Hmm.
what's going
It's
on.
so drawn out. It's so
and
suspenseful.
and what they kept doing is they kept going and showing Josh, they like were shooting him from the angle because whenever he serves he does that weird thing like this.
Yeah, apparently
And
that's
they
not a very conventional serve either in
not
tennis.
yeah, not super weird. And they would film him from this weird angle like up above him, like kind of craned down over his head.
Hmm.
And so during that scene there's a part where they kind of shoot him like that, but he's not serving, just so you can just to kind of call out the fact like, okay, like you're expecting to see him do this but then he's not doing it. And I was like, oh no, I was like, he's gonna do the thing. And then he did it, and then it was great. Yeah.
You see, that to me, I didn't pick up on that earlier in the movie. So I'm kind of wondering what the fuck's going on at that point in the movie. And
Mm-hmm.
but even though I missed it, I was able to piece it together like through the context clues and everything, and just all the wordless communication that was just executed so fucking flawlessly that I was able to figure it out. And then afterwards when I went online and stuff and kind of was able to fill in the missing spots of the things that I missed. But God, yeah, I mean, just such an incredible movie. Totally caught me by surprise. Um,
Makes it that much better. Yeah.
Gonna be tough to unseat this as my favorite. I think. I don't know. My rankings tend to really shake out and turn out a little differently once the year's all said and done. So
Got more than half a year still.
we do, and it's always good to have things get dethroned because that just means that there's really good fucking movies.
Right. Like the best outcome would be like to hit the end of the year and that be like number 5, and you'd be like, man, like
Yeah,
had all
yeah,
had all these
seriously.
crazy bangers come out. Yeah.
Yeah, that means that there was because I've got it at I've gave it a perfect score. I couldn't think of of anything really that I disliked about Challengers. So,
Nice.
all right, so let's move on to one that you've seen, but I have not seen. And we talked a little bit about this before, but so we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. But I would just like to get because you've had a little bit more time to process this since the last time we talked about it. So I just want to kind of let you take the reins here and talk about I Saw the TV Glow.
I don't want to say too much about this movie. I feel like there's a lot of people that probably have not seen this yet. I know it's kind of
Yeah,
hard to find. I think it's getting more of a release
it's
now, maybe.
starting to get a wider release. I don't know when, if ever, it'll come to my Regal. This might be a VOD thing for me. I'm really not sure. So
I I loved I loved this movie. I saw it like 3 weeks ago now, and I'm literally still like I'm thinking about it still. And there's still stuff where I'm like, oh shit, like this was that. Um, it's hard to connect to this to like. There's not like. It'd be really hard to be like, oh, it's kind of like this movie.
mm.
Um, if anything, and this is a very not good comparison, but this is the closest thing I can think of right now. It's sort of in like the Donnie Darko.
Dude, that's so fucking wild because I knew you were about to say that. When a moment ago when you were like, if I had to compare it to something, I was like, he's gonna say Donnie Darko.
If I had to,
That's
right?
crazy that I knew you were gonna say that.
And it's like, and I've seen some I've seen some dog shit takes on Twitter.com of people being
Ugh.
like, man, of being like, this movie, like what even is this? And but like I totally get it because it's one of those movies where it kind of like it kind of just like gives you a bunch of stuff and then it like leaves and then you have to be like, well, okay, like
You're kind
what
of
do
like
I do?
left holding all this stuff, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, well,
you're
hold
like,
on, let me put this down.
Yeah.
address this, and I'll get back to
Yes.
that. I got this over here.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that kind of
Yeah.
movie. That at least from what I've gathered.
Yeah, and it definitely is reminiscent of like a lot of like 90s Nickelodeon,
Mm.
and definitely like Buffy, which I've never really actually watched, but I know that's your shit.
It's like that
um
'90s camp.
yeah, and but in like a very strange way. It's like a super strange movie all around. And but like really beautiful in a strange way, and um, it's really hard to talk about it without talking too much about the plot. But it's like the biggest thing that I'll say is that it very much like there's like a couple layers of realities going on in the film, and the way that it chooses to like give you those pieces of reality is like very thoughtful, and then it kind of just like leaves it up to you to be like, okay, well, like you can decide where like how these realities stack, and like what the real one is and what the not real one is. um Again, similar-ish to Donnie Darko in that way, but like even more abstract.
Yeah.
And a very feels like a very super like modern film, which is a weird term to use, but like deals with a lot of like current day like issues and weird social things and stuff like that in a way that like I haven't really seen another movie do, where you're like, oh, this is this weird movie that very much feels like it was born today. So
So it's set in like the modern day.
um I think it's set in like 2010ish,
Okay.
something like
Interesting.
that. But it's in like I think they actually shot a bunch of it. I want to say in Jersey. But
Interesting.
it looks like it's kind of set in kind of like middle American-ish, like sort of suburbia, sort of like it could be like in like the same town that like Sandlot is in, like that sort of kind of, if that helps. I don't know.
Right, right. Just kind of middle America.
Yeah, and it was I had like kind of, sort of an idea of what I thought it was going to be going into it, and it was not really that at all. And then
Mm.
I ended up liking it even more. And yeah, it's definitely like something that I'm gonna watch a bunch of times. And like I said, like it's been a few weeks since I've seen it, and I'm still thinking about it and like piecing it together. And like that for me is like my favorite shit.
So, how would you rank Dune 2, Challengers, and TV Glow?
Oh man,
If I had to make you do that,
in terms of what?
just what was your favorite and your least favorite? I'll let you use whatever criteria.
Okay, how about this? How about in terms of the actual? I don't know. In terms of just like the experience of watching it, I'd probably actually go Challengers Dune TV Glow,
Okay.
and and then what I think I'm gonna rewatch the most over the course of my life, probably TV Glow Dune Challengers.
Mm. It's such a loaded question because it's like, what's favorite and best are two different things.
Yeah.
Like, if you ask me what my favorite movie of the year was and what I think the objective best movie of the year is, the answers might be different. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
probably say Dune 2 is like objectively the best movie of this year so far, but Challengers I enjoyed watching more. So there's so many different criteria, and we're kind of flirting with this other topic that we've been wanting to talk about. So I don't know if we could even, if you wanted to just even segue into that right now, or what are you thinking? We still can maybe go for another 20-ish minutes or so. So
Yeah, I will say at least like, yeah, we've come and talked about like how hard it is to, or just like how weird it is, like the idea of like rating and ranking and like
mhm.
labeling something as like the best or whatever, and like how much weird criteria goes into that. Because I feel like when you say like, oh, this was the best, or like you being like, okay, what's the best of these three? I feel like when I hear like best, part of that decision is like me trying to guess what I think other people will think is also
Mm,
the
right.
best.
Which, so best is like, the large spanning group, and then favorite is very much singular, subjective. Like what does Tyler think?
Yeah, because like 10 years from now, I think of like something that I have like I think I'm gonna have more of like a this is a weird term. I'm gonna have more of like a life connection with I
Hmm.
saw the TV glow than I will with like Dune, right? I'm not gonna be
Right.
like I'm not gonna be like
There,
oh my god like
you really can't see ourselves in Dune in any way. Like that is so far removed from like our lived experiences.
yeah yeah yeah
So yeah, like Dune, I'm only ever going to be able to connect to Dune 2 so much. You know what I mean? Where let's just I'm just gonna do this. Um, yeah, it's a super tricky thing anymore. I really love using Letterboxd. I think it's an incredibly useful app for a lot of different reasons. My main thing that I really like about it is that the longer you use it, the more you get out of it.
mm-hmm.
I've been using it since like early 2019, and it really becomes like a diary of, it's like a life in film. I can look up my stats for the years 2019, 2020, 21, all the way up until now. And I can tell you how many movies I watched and which were first time watches, what was new, what were rewatches, like anything you can think of. I'll give you the breakdown, the actors that I watched the most in, like the directors that I've watched the most of their movies,
Mm.
all that stuff. I find that to be very valuable information. I think it's really cool, as opposed to having it just kind of be like this sort of thing,
This
this
cloud of
just sort of, yeah, that's like, oh, I think I watched a lot of movies that year. I don't fucking know.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So, but for me, I find that to be valuable information. Other people don't prioritize that sort of thing, and that's just kind of the way it goes, right? So, um, but it's not without its flaws, cons,
Mhm.
because anymore, and I've made a few videos about this on my channel, but anymore I kind of go into a movie now and I can't help but think of things in terms of the 5-star rating system.
Mm.
And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, this movie at best is going to be like a 3.5.
Mhm. Like
And
while you're watching it still.
before I've even watched it, if I've seen a trailer, I know who's
Mm.
in it, I know who directed it. Things like that can affect that, where I'm like, okay, this movie is maybe going to be a 3.5 at best. And that's just how I go into things. And it's just a learned behavior. And I go into, like last night when I saw In a Violent Nature. I go into In a Violent Nature and I'm like, man, I really hope this is like a 4-star movie. And that's just
Mhm.
kind of how I think about things. And I don't know if that's detrimental. It feels wrong, like
Mhm.
artistically, but it's just sort of like how I quantify things. And I know
Mhm.
you have a drastically different take on this stuff. And I don't know if this just comes from using the app so much, watching as many movies as I do, that it just is how it's just how it makes sense for me to organize things, because not all films are created equally. Some movies
Mhm.
are just better than others. I
Mhm.
don't really think anyone would disagree with that. So, and I like making lists. I really love making lists. I have my end of the year lists that I update with every new film, and then I add it to the list. And like In a Violent Nature is my third favorite movie of the year. So I slide it up and I put it in that third spot. Something gets moved down. It's very satisfying for me.
Mhm.
So that's just I don't know. What do you think about that? Like
Well,
what is your takeaway here?
how about let me ask you a question
Please.
first. I would guess, and you tell me, but I would guess that so you went into challengers thinking like okay like the ceiling for this movie as far as score goes is like a 4
Yeah.
or whatever
Based
and
on the
I'm
other films of Lucas that I had seen.
mm-hmm. like
I think I gave Bones and All a 4 as well. So,
so you go in with this like preconceived kind of like and like giving something a score insinuates a lot of other stuff about it, right? Where you're essentially like compressing everything about this film into like it's a four, right?
Yeah, so essentially, if I give something a 5 stars, that is a masterpiece. That is a perfect film. I have no flaws that I could even levy at it. And the way I look at the scale too is I don't give out fours and fives just to anything. I
Mm-hmm.
find that I'm a pretty harsh critic, and then I use that 5 star scaling system to reflect that. So if I give something a 5, that should at least tell whoever is interested that I really loved that movie. And like, I see a lot of other people hurling, just throwing fives and fours, point fives, like at everything. And I'm just like, it devalues that scaling system, in my opinion. So I don't want to go off too much because it looked like you're about to say something else too. So please take it
No,
from.
no, that's interesting actually, because I wonder like maybe maybe then that is like becomes part of it, where like if you are then going to use somebody else's scoring of something to like help you figure out like how help you compartmentalize or organize something yourself, maybe it helps to like be familiar with how that person usually scores things, right? Because like if I go and I look at your thing and you're like, yeah, I gave this a 5, then I'm like, oh, okay, like
Right.
this like I'm assuming this is like fucking great then, because Mark doesn't, like, I know that he has like a high wall that he has to get over in a film to
Yeah.
like give it that, as opposed to like somebody who generally who's like average film score would be like a 4.5, right? So maybe like maybe part of the problem is just like not having the context of the person that you're looking at the scores of, like, you know what I mean? Like maybe you need that context of how they usually do stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it can tell you a lot about um, the person, because the other aspect of Letterbox is that it's sort of like a social media app as
Mm-hmm.
well. You
Mm-hmm.
can see what your friends give certain movies too, and you can write reviews and you can read their review and stuff. Um, so everyone's going to have their own biases that they bring to the table. Like, In a Violent Nature is a love letter to slasher films, and specifically like camp slashers, which, as you know, I'm super into. I made a whole video about it. So like, if there was ever a target for that movie, it was me. So I fucking loved it for that reason. Somebody else could see it and not come out of it thinking about it that way. So yeah, it's interesting because it definitely tells you a lot about the individual. And then conversely, there are people who use Letterboxd, and you don't have to use the star system. You
Hmm.
can just slap like a heart on something, or you can not slap a heart on it. You can just like write a review, or you can write no review. You can just log that you watched it, and you can put no
Mm.
other information around it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't find that to be very interesting. It would still serve the same purpose of logging things and like
Logging. Yeah.
being able to see when you watch things. Just for curiosity's sake, like if I'm thinking, like, man, when was the last time I watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? I could tell you exactly when I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Seemingly useless information. I don't know. I find it to be something of value. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, right? Like if you're, um, like for like what you're doing, like a lot of that becomes like relevant, potentially helpful data when you're like writing a video about film or
Mm-hmm.
something. You can go back and be like, oh, like yeah, like go back through and actually like have a system that you can go to like find that info, instead of just being like, I think I watched these kinds of horror movies 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Like you have
Mm-hmm.
that there. I feel like I kind of do that for music. I make like a lot of like playlists on Spotify, and I think a lot more about like a new album comes out and I like listen to it a few times and then think about how I like that. Like you know what? This is really, I haven't really thought about this. Like I do that for music. Like I have like an album of the year playlist on Spotify for each year. It's like as albums come out, where I'm like, oh man, like like I won't. They're not in order, but I'm like, oh, like this is definitely one of my favorite albums that's gonna come out this year, so I'll add it to that playlist. And so I'm like organizing the stuff from like this is the best shit from this year, but no, I'm not ranking it, but I'm putting it all together. I
Okay.
guess I do that, but just I just don't do it
Interesting.
for I don't do it for movies. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, and that makes sense because I think you're more of a musically inclined person than a filmically. You live in both worlds and you do so, quite well. You're very, you're well informed on both, but would it be fair to say that like music is more where your real passion is?
Yeah, and I just by like nature of like my, what my day looks like, I consume so much more music than
Then you
I
do
do
films. Yeah.
film. Yeah, it
It's
just
more
goes better.
digestible in that way.
Hmm.
So I think it's in what we're learning here is that it's human nature to want to be able to like categorize things and like sort of quantify like what's good and what's not. I don't take pleasure in like rating films poorly, but
Yeah.
I think it's important to do so because I don't want to like I don't want to go out of my way to like try to find things to prop something up. I'm
Right.
not a filmmaker, and I know how hard it, but I do know that it's hard to make a movie.
Hmm.
But that said, sometimes people put in more effort than others, and I think that that deserves, you know, a reward. And if the reward is me giving it 5 stars on Letterbox, then so be it. You know what I mean?
I like to think that even though is at home like going through like
Just
letterbox
scrolling.
and just seeing all the 5 stars and he's like, damn, like we really like he's like we made a fucking banger.
Oh man, I doubt he does anything like that because he strikes me as the kind of guy who has like a landline. Like
Hmm.
he doesn't go on social media because he's just so about that life that he's like I don't have time for
He
fucking
literally
Twitter.
Yeah, like he literally just like leaves the set of a film and then walks on to like the next set and he's like, all right, let's make a movie.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's definitely something that's interesting to me. It's because before I can distinctly remember a time in my life when I didn't use Letterboxd. It wasn't that long ago,
Hmm.
and I don't know, just the way I look at movies now versus then is different. Um, I messed around on like IMDb a little bit. Like they have a similar sort of feature where you can um like give a rating to stuff, but it wasn't as intuitive and like user friendly as Letterboxd has become. So it was never really anything like what I'm doing now as far as like being able to quantify things.
Dude, I used to do that on iTunes. So like
Yeah, yeah.
I never like with music like I didn't buy stuff, but I like torrent stuff and then add it to iTunes and go and like organize it, make sure I had like the right name and like all that stuff, and then I would like rate stuff. You could like five. I think it was like literally like 5 stars like in iTunes, and
Hmm.
I would do that. And now I'm thinking about it, and I think it's like I'm sure this is not original thought. I'm sure that like there's some like like not psychiatrist. What is it?
Psychologist,
Psycho.
same
there's some
same
yeah.
thing.
There's some psychologists that would hear this and be like, yeah, bro, this is like psychology 101. But I feel like being able to have this like log of me being like, okay, like this is the music that had an impact on me and that's like very important for me
Yeah,
enough to like log and like see, okay, 5 years ago I thought that this album was like fucking amazing. And same thing for you with movies, be able to go back and be like, these are the things
yeah.
that were like impactful for me. That like kind of helps you like almost like chart yourself,
Yes, exactly.
right?
It's like a
It's kind
living
of
log
crazy.
because on Letterboxd you can look at your review history and
Hmm.
like for example, maybe I came out of Joker in 2019 and gave it 5 stars. I remember doing that. As time goes by,
Mm.
you come down on things, your opinions change, and then
Mhm.
next time you watch it, you can log it less, and
Mhm.
you can look at the history and you can say, "Oh, I went down on this," or "I went up on this. I watched this multiple times and I liked it more."
Mm.
So that's a thing. And the other thing about it is that when I can search on Letterboxd by my 5 star films. And when I look at
Mhm.
that list of movies, I can point to these movies and say these are quantifiably the best movies I've ever seen. They accurately represent like my tastes in films. If I were to show someone that list, it would tell you a lot about me and what I like as a person. So I do find there to be value in these rating systems for things like that, um, versus just not assigning um, any kind of denomination to something, because it's like it's so binary and it feels odd, because like I could watch Dumb and Dumber and I'll give that a 5-star rating, and then I'll watch The Godfather and I'll give that 5 stars, and someone would be like, what, how can Dumb and Dumber and The Godfather both be 5 stars? Like, that makes no sense. But it's
Right,
like
right,
you have to grade everything like in a vacuum, you know? So it's like I'm not devaluing films like on an individual level. I think if anything, like I'm doing the opposite and being like, as far as comedies go, Dumb and Dumber makes me laugh more than anything. So why
right,
wouldn't I give it 5 stars? It's the funniest movie of all time to me. So
right. I'm like Jay and Silent Bob is effectively a perfect film.
it's a perfect film.
Yeah,
There's nothing
but
wrong with it at all. It literally does everything perfectly. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, right. But then it's like, maybe I've just been overthinking the rating thing, because like what everything you just said like totally makes sense, and maybe it's more me being like have like a feeling like I need to, when I'm rating something, take into consideration what I think other people will think about my rating more than I should be. Like, it should just be a reflection of like somebody should see like my rating for something and be like, all right, this is what this guy fucks with, and like that's it. And maybe part of it too is me thinking of like, I think that gets a little messy when you start thinking of like GQ or like E or like these big like real big like media outlets and stuff who then also do that, and then, or like the Rolling Stone top 100 albums where you're like, what is that?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
those are different things.
it's interesting because I would never come out and say, I don't know, I think you have to really have a high opinion of yourself to be like, this is the
The
best movie,
definitive list, yeah.
yeah, of the best movies of all time, right? Like that's something that you would have to take like an aggregate score of like a lot of different people to
Mm-hmm.
kind of find like an average, because
Mm-hmm.
there is no one person who can like be the arbiter of something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right,
then
like this guy
also,
says best taste.
yeah, right, like, oh, this is the guy. No, everyone's, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like film is not um an objective medium. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
the only value to be gained, well, in a way of assigning ratings to these movies, is to reflect my taste. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
giving it 5 stars because I think everyone's going to think it's 5 stars. I'm giving it 5 stars because that's what I give it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, kind of talking about something else that you had mentioned, you can feel like a pressure. Like if you see everyone's like, oh, Dune 2 is 5 stars, Dune 2 is 5 stars, and then you go into it and you're like, I don't know, I didn't really love that. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
am I wrong for not wanting to give it that? So it's like, it really creates this a really interesting sort of ecosystem with like, and that's why I really think it's super important to just like have your scores reflect you accurately to a T without any outside influence. But on the other hand, sometimes outside influence can be good, because someone might show you a thing or a facet of a movie that you watched that you hadn't considered, and it totally makes you reevaluate how you thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but I guess the point is that it's important to talk about this stuff, because you can be opened up to different ways of thinking that on your own you might not have arrived at.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like interesting. I know, when I saw the TV Glow ended, I had like the quick two thoughts of being like, I fucking loved that, and then also being like, people are gonna fucking hate this.
Yeah, yeah, because there can be like the victim. You can be a victim of your own expectations.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It was one of those ones too where there's like the ending in particular. You're like, oh man, like if you weren't like if you're not really in here and like if you don't understand what's going on at least somewhat, like you could be like that was absolute garbage and just never think about it again.
I think it's safe to say that some films seek to challenge you on a level that other films are not. Some films don't want to challenge you at all. They just want you to have a good time and enjoy yourself, and they're not asking hard-hitting questions.
I like
You
that too.
know, they're asking you, um, you know, what happened to this bird, my headless bird, in Dumb and Dumber when the bird gets his fucking head cut off.
Jay and Silent Bob does not really like
No,
it tells you exactly what's going on.
yeah.
Nothing to question later. Yeah.
So I'm glad we talked about that because in a lot of ways, um, people might catch this on the replay or whatever, but in a lot of ways, this was just kind of us having a conversation amongst ourselves, and we're inviting people to kind of listen in. So I think that's kind of fun. I think if you're at all interested in movies, this is a conversation that pertains to you in at least some way. So people are definitely going to have an opinion on it, one way or the other. Um, so with that being said, we could probably start bringing this to a close. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
You actually just we briefly talked about the rating thing a couple times over the last few weeks, and like
Yeah, we kind of
actually now,
touched on it. We never really fully went in on it though.
yeah, and now actually sitting down and fully like we'll definitely talk about it more, but just like actually talking about it now has already kind of like swayed me a little bit the other way, being like, oh, okay,
See, that's so interesting because that was certainly not my intention. If anything,
mm-hmm,
I wanted to kind of hear both sides and just kind of
mm-hmm,
explain to you just kind of the way my brain works now, and and why it is that way. And not that that's the right way. There's your way is the right way too. It's all down to the individual. So, um, yeah, certain people value other things over other things. So
that's all I got.
so I got to. I'm fucking beat. Work kicked my ass today. Um, Next time we talk, we could perhaps discuss this a little bit. Um,
You should add just like an again in parentheses because I feel like we hear this every few years now,
this
but yeah,
the answer is no. I mean, we could just address it right now. Movie theaters are not dying. They never will. If they survived fucking COVID, I think we'll be okay. That Furiosa bombed, a super niche property to begin with. It's a prequel to a film that came out 9 years ago. Um, Not shocked that it bombed. Is the movie great? Yeah, it fucking rules. But doesn't mean movie theaters are dying. Anyway, if we find that there's meat on the bone on our next live stream, which we're aiming to do these every 2 weeks on Fridays. Schedules permitting, it's hard to coordinate sometimes, but yeah, the hope is to do these every 2 weeks and discuss things like what we talked about tonight, or just nothing at all. Maybe we could do a watch party of Jane Silent Bob and just kind of riff for an hour. So either way, I really enjoyed doing these. Tyler, thank you so much for joining me to talk about films.
always thanks for having me.
Oh, hey, we just got a comment here right at the end. The Undead of Night, super cool guy. He's been liking and watching a lot of my recent videos lately, and I really appreciate that. Liking the letterbox conversation. I go into movies expecting a 2.5 and hope it is better. I don't think I have one 5-star rated movie. That's really interesting. Because that indicates that you don't think that any movie is perfect, which you could certainly make a credible argument. It's all down to the individual, as we said. So that is definitely interesting, and that just kind of further serves to illustrate how differently everyone thinks about this subject. So I'm really glad you liked the conversation. I hope more people catch this on the replay if they're interested. I might have to adjust the title to reflect the conversation that we went into so that people know that it's something we talk about. Unfortunately, we are going to split here on Dead of Night, so thank you so much for coming in here, letting us know that you're watching and supporting. I want to say thanks to Allie as well. She's always very supportive and super cool. I have not seen the house that Jack built. I don't really like that director, Lars von Trier. I haven't really dug his style of the things that I have seen, but I really hope you like In a Violent Nature. Let me know what you think about it. DM me on Instagram or something, and we can maybe talk about that. So with that said, guys, have a good night. Take care. You want to say it? You want to say the
Watch,
thing?
watch more movies.
Take care and watch more movies, folks. It's been great. Everybody have a good night and enjoy summer. Summer's here, so
Let's go.
get on out there and do summer things. All right, bye everybody. Take care.
Peace.